The storm raged with a ferocity that seemed almost sentient, as if the planet itself sought to purge the intruder from its surface. Snowflakes, sharp as shards of glass, whipped through the air, obscuring the horizon and burying the landscape in a suffocating blanket of white. The wind howled like a wounded beast, drowning out all other sounds. In the midst of this chaos, a lone figure stumbled through the drifts, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She was not of this world. Princess Calith of a Zarathian empire clutched her side, her silver blood seeping through her fingers and freezing almost instantly upon contact with the icy air. Her once pristine armor, adorned with intricate carvings of her royal lineage, was now battered and cracked. Her violet eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, scanned the desolate terrain for any sign of shelter. But there was nothing, only the endless white expanse and the relentless storm. Calith had been abandoned, betrayed. Her own brother, Prince Vorin, had orchestrated her exile, casting her out of their starship and leaving her to die on this frozen wasteland of a planet. He had always been jealous of her status as the heir to the throne, and now, with their father on his deathbed, Vorin had seized his chance to eliminate her. Calith's heart burned with anger and sorrow, but she refused to give in to despair. She would survive. She had to, but the cold was relentless, sapping her strength with every step. Her body, adapted to the warmer climates of her homeworld, was ill-suited to this frozen hell. Her vision blurred, and her legs buckled beneath her. She collapsed into the snow, her breath coming in shallow, labored bursts. The storm continued to rage around her, indifferent to her plight. Miles away, in a small outpost nestled in the shadow of a mountain, human medic Elias Carter was preparing for another long, uneventful night. The outpost, a relic of a failed colonization effort, was now little more than a way station for scientists and explorers braving the planet's harsh conditions. Elias had been stationed here for 2 years, tending to the occasional frostbite or broken bone. It was a lonely existence, but he had grown accustomed to it. As he sipped a cup of synthetic coffee, the comms system crackled to life. "Elias, we got an anomaly on the scanners," came the voice of Dr. Lena Marquez, the outpost's lead scientist. "About 10 clicks northeast of here. Could be a distress signal, but it's faint. Might just be interference from a storm." Elias set down his cup and leaned closer to the console. "I'll check it out," he said, already pulling on his thermal suit. "If it's nothing, I'll be back before you know it. If it's something, well, let's hope it's not another frozen corpse." Grabbing his medkit and a portable scanner, Elias stepped out into the storm. The wind immediately assaulted him, but his suit held firm, shielding him from the worst of the cold. He trudged through the snow, following the faint signal on his scanner. The journey was grueling, and more than once he considered turning back. But something compelled him to press on, a gut feeling that he couldn't ignore. After what felt like hours, Elias spotted a dark shape in the snow. As he drew closer, his breath caught in his throat. It was a woman, or at least something resembling a woman. Her skin was a pale, almost luminous blue, and her armor, though damaged, was unlike anything he had ever seen. Her violet eyes fluttered open as he approached, and she reached out a trembling hand. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Help me." Elias didn't hesitate. He knelt beside her, quickly assessing her injuries. The gash in her side was deep, and her body temperature was dangerously low. "Hang on," he said, injecting her with a stimulant to keep her conscious. "I'm getting you out of here." With great effort, he lifted her into his arms and began the arduous journey back to the outpost. The storm seemed to intensify, as if trying to stop him, but Elias pressed on, driven by a determination he hadn't felt in years. By the time they reached the outpost, both he and the alien woman were on the verge of collapse. Dr. Marquez was waiting for them, her eyes widening in shock as Elias staggered through the door with his unexpected guest. "What the hell is that?" she exclaimed, helping him lay the woman on a medical bed. "No idea," Elias panted, already grabbing supplies to treat her wounds. "But she's alive, and she needs our help." As they worked to stabilize her, they discovered just how different she was from a human. Her blood was silver and viscous, her organs arranged in a way that defied their understanding of biology. But Elias adapted quickly, using his knowledge of xenobiology to keep her alive. Hours passed, and slowly but surely, her condition improved. When Kayla finally regained consciousness, she found herself in a strange, sterile room, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. She tensed, her instincts screaming at her to fight, but the pain in her side reminded her of her vulnerability. "Where am I?" she demanded, her voice weak but firm. "You're safe," Elias said, stepping forward with his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I found you in the storm. You were badly injured, but we managed to stabilize you. My name is Elias. This is Dr. Marquez." Caliph studied him warily. He was unlike any being she had ever encountered, his skin a warm brown, his eyes a deep, earthy green. There was no malice in his gaze, only concern. Slowly, she relaxed. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I'm Caliph of the Zarathian Empire. I owe you my life." Over the following days, Caliph recovered under Elias's care. She learned about the humans and their outpost, and in turn, she shared fragments of her own story. Elias was fascinated by her tales of the Zarathian Empire, a vast interstellar civilization far beyond humanity's reach. But he could see the pain in her eyes when she spoke of her brother's betrayal. As they spent more time together, a bond began to form between them. Caliph was intrigued by Elias's compassion and resilience, qualities she had rarely encountered in her own kind. Elias, in turn, was drawn to her strength and determination, as well as the mystery of her alien heritage. But their peace was short-lived. One evening, as the storm finally began to subside, the outpost's alarms blared to life. "We've got incoming," Dr. Marquez shouted, her face pale. "A ship, massive, and it's heading straight for us." Calipha's heart sank. She knew that ship. It was the Eclipse, her brother's flagship. Vorin had come to finish what he had started. The Eclipse descended like a predator, its sleek, obsidian hull gleaming in the pale light of the planet's sun. A detachment of Zarathian soldiers, clad in black armor, stormed the outpost, their weapons trained on the humans. Elias and Dr. Marquez were quickly subdued, but Caliph stood her ground, her eyes blazing with defiance. "Brother!" she spat as Vorin stepped into the room, his crimson eyes cold and calculating. "You dare show your face after what you've done?" Vorin smirked, his voice dripping with mockery. "Dear sister, you always were too stubborn for your own good. Did you really think you could escape me? This pathetic outpost, these primitive creatures, they cannot protect you." Before Caliph could respond, Elias struggled against his captors. "Let her go," he shouted. "She's done nothing to you." Vorin's gaze shifted to Elias, his expression one of mild amusement. "How touching. The human has grown attached to you, sister. But he is irrelevant, as are you, now that father is dead and the throne is mine." Caliph's heart ached at the news of her father's passing, but she refused to show weakness. "You may have taken the throne," she said, her voice steady, "but you will never have the loyalty of our people. They will see you for the traitor you are." Vorin's smirk faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. "Enough of this. Kill the humans. Bring my sister to the ship." She will face execution for her supposed crimes. As the soldiers moved to carry out his orders, Caliph acted. With a burst of strength, she disarmed one of her captors and turned his weapon on the others. Elias and Dr. Marquez seized the opportunity to fight back, using whatever they could find as makeshift weapons. The outpost became a battlefield, the humans and the alien princess fighting side by side against Vorn's forces. In the chaos, Caliph confronted her brother. Their clash was fierce, a duel of skill and willpower. But Caliph fought not just for her own survival, but for the lives of those who had shown her kindness. With a final, decisive strike, she disarmed Vorin and held the blade to his throat. "Mercy," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I am your brother." Caliph hesitated, her heart torn. But then she thought of Elias, of the compassion he had shown her. "Mercy is not something you deserve," she said coldly. "But I am not like you." She lowered the blade and stepped back. "Leave this place, and if you ever return, I will not hesitate to end you." Vorin fled, his soldiers retreating with him. The Eclipse departed, leaving the outpost in peace. In the aftermath, Caliph stood with Elias and Dr. Marquez, watching the stars. "What will you do now?" Elias asked. Caliph smiled, a rare and genuine expression. "I will return to my people," she said, "but not as a princess, as a leader. I will reclaim my throne, not through violence, but through unity and compassion. And I will never forget the kindness you have shown me." Elias nodded, a bittersweet feeling in his chest. "You'll always have a friend here, Caliph, no matter how far apart we are." As Caliph prepared to leave, she placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "Thank you," she said softly, "for saving me, for showing me that there is still hope in this universe." And with that, she boarded a small shuttle, her eyes set on the stars. Elias watched until she was out of sight, knowing that their paths would cross again. For in the vastness of the cosmos, even the most unlikely of bonds could endure.